Okay, so welcome to today's first class for portrait drawing. I'm glad all of you can be here, and I'm gonna let Sam take it away.
Right, I guess I will reveal my face. Stop being cryptic. Hey, everybody, welcome. Thank you to the Hoboken Library for hosting me once again. This time with a drawing class. I usually do the paint events, and well, that kind of got, you know, stuck in the mud with the whole COVID thing. But we have had a couple of online classes, and those were pretty successful. And but I kind of threw out the idea if they would want to do some drawing classes. Well, it was kind of back and forth. They were looking for more content. I asked them, how about a drawing class? They said sure, and here we are. So one of my other loves is portrait drawing, and that's what I suggested. I gave you guys a couple of handouts describing a popular method for approaching portrait drawing. It's Andrew Loomis. Andrew Loomis was a professional illustrator in the, I guess, mid to early 1900s, I guess the 40s and 50s, around there, around that time. And he had kind of distilled this information or this kind of method. It's actually called the Loomis method. If you wanted to do a Google search, and you'll find thousands of examples. And yeah, it was just this distilled information, like how to do the head, and it just lets us easily kind of place the head in multiple, in any angle that you want. And I found it very useful, and I thought I'd just pass on the love. So I'll start with, I guess, I want to manage some expectations. So after this class, you will not be a portrait expert. So I just want to start off there. This takes a lot of time and skill building. And it's not, we're obviously not computers, so it's like once it goes in, it's one and done. It takes, multiple attempts. It takes a lot of practice. It's kind of like with a lot of other things. If you don't use it, you lose it, right? So any other skill involved, it's kind of the same way. You don't play piano for 10 years, you're not going to be playing the same way you were. So this, this falls in suit right with that. Even though we are going to be doing something somewhat formulaic, right? We have a formula, we have a way to approach something. It still does take practice, and so I just want to say that. And also, I am not a guru. I don't know it all. I've heard it compared to being on a journey. So as an artist, I myself am on a journey. I'm just a little further ahead on that journey than you are. So I'm not a one-stop shop. I'm not a, I like to say, I give you guys some information, and then you take it and you kind of run with it. You do, be curious, look up stuff on your own, experiment on your own. There's multiple ways to approach portraiture. This is just one of those that it seems to me a great way to introduce, you know, beginning artists, and it's been pretty good experience so far. The people I've introduced it to, they've said they found it helpful, just like it was for me. So yeah, so even after all these years, I've been, well, a little bit of background information. I'm a Rutgers University graduate. I went to the art school there, Mason Gross School of the Arts. Before that, my father had introduced me to art when I was, single digits. He was like an amateur artist, but very, very, really, very good. He was actually accepted into the art School of Art and Design in high school. He never completed it though, but it's something that stuck with him for years and years and years. And to this day, he still draws, and he'll go on his creation adventures. But he was the first person to give me a pencil and paper in hand, and I just took with it and ran with it and tried to make a professional career out of it. So, so having said that, although I have decades worth of drawing and painting experience, I still approach a blank page kind of the same way you might approach. I look at it, I have to take a deep breath and say, all right, here we go, one more time, So even with all my experience, there's still, there's this notion that, okay, there will be mistakes made. I'm going to, I just have the ability to see my mistakes, and I know how to correct them. That's where your like lack of experience kind of kicks in, where you're not really sure which way to go. And I feel like that's another reason why this like formulaic approach kind of helps you out. And there's actually a couple of really good references that I wanted to give you. One of them being a 3D reference, like a 3D model reference site, and it's free. Let me just come up with the name real quick. Oh, I didn't save it. Okay, so I think it's not SketchUp. It is called Sketchfab. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. I'm actually going to show you the reference that I used for these processes. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So the website is called sketchfab.com. Okay, and then you'll have these wonderful 3D models. They are a little bit, you know, I guess equipment dependent. So 3D models require a tremendous amount of calculation to do. So computers that are kind of on the, I guess, underpowered side might have a little bit of trouble, but I would still encourage checking these out. Like, I wouldn't let that slow me down. So if I typed in the search, where is the search? So I'm going to look up Loomis by itself. You'll get these head structures, right? Very simple. And you'll get multiple versions. So this is kind of like free access to the public. So you're going to get tons of different stuff. But for the most part, I use these two models, this one here and this one here. And you can see you could turn it in space. And I clicked on this one. So you don't have to pay anything. So you can see you could turn it around in space. Okay. You can even zoom in for a closer look. And this is basically what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be dissecting what you're actually seeing here, why this is useful. And yeah. Okay, let's see. I just want to discuss tools. So not everyone is really, I guess, adept at drawing circles and tools. So I just want to, circles and ovals. So I want to show you some tools that you could either purchase or even make. So we have these kind of circle and ellipse templates, right? So these aren't that expensive. You could probably find these at most local art stores or even some stationery stores, right? If you don't want to go as far as that, right, there's even one of these guys, right? It's a simple compass. So I'm looking at pretty much the circles here, where you put one pencil here, and then you just drag it around there, and it should make a perfect circle, right? Circles and ovals are the basis for the portrait, which is why I'm pushing that. So here you have your handy dandy compass. I guess maybe some of you guys haven't seen this since high school, but in this case, it's adjustable, right? This is actually a nice one. Stedler usually makes nice stuff. This is mostly for, I think, architectural drawing, or you know, what is that called? Industrial design type things, right? You need something very precise. Stedler is usually a very good brand that you can trust. It's also my pencil over here. But if all of that is like, all right, I really don't want to go that route, you can go the low-tech route, and this is just a piece of cardstock. I poked 2 holes in it, right? So the holes represent the radius of a circle. So I would put, you know, one pencil here, and I would put another pencil on this side, right? So this is very low tech, and you can get a perfect circle. And plus, you can make it any size you want, right? So here I have a hole poked in the middle. So now I would make, if this is the radius, you know, if you double up the size, it would be the size of that circle. So this is very, you know, low tech. Anybody can do this. And this stuff was, I'm like, you know, some people are addicted to buying sneakers and shoes. I'm addicted to buying art supplies and art tools. So that's why I have all this stuff. Is it completely necessary? Nope. Like I said, on the fly, I've made these many a time when I needed a perfect circle. So those are just some tools that we can use, right? So going a little bit further along, this is what we're going to be tackling today, right? So this is the Loomis method of drawing the face. So it consists of a circular shape, which is always, for the mass of the cranium, right? The upper portion of the head. And then we have this box here, addition to that circle. This would be, the jaw and representing the planes of the face. You have the front plane, the side plane, meeting the side plane of the face. One of the interesting approaches to this is, this side oval here, because our heads aren't perfectly circular. So if we look at this little skull guy here, right, you can see that these indentations of the skull, right, that's where the muscles for the jaw lie, right? So that's when you're chewing, you're chewing away on your food and you see your temples kind of, throbbing in and out, or, just flexing. It's because that's where the muscles located for lifting the jaw are. So what that creates is kind of like a flat plane on the side of the face. And the way to represent that is with an oval. So whenever you see these ovals, consider it like, that part of the circle's been cut off. Or like if you picture a clay ball and you just slice off the sides of the sphere, then you get this flat circular plane. Now, this is where drawing ovals really comes into play, because however you draw the oval, right? First, we start with a circle. However you draw the oval dictates how much the face has turned in space. So if I'm looking straight on you, right, that oval appears flat, right? Just like if you took a quarter and you put it on its edge and you looked down at its edge, it would appear flat. It would appear like a line. Now, as you turn the face, you'll have a thinner and more, all right, let's use this. So you would have a thinner oval, okay? And as the face turns, the oval gets wider and wider and wider until you have a complete circle, right, representing the side of the head, okay? Our next, I guess, panel will show that. Once we've established how big or what angle we want the face to appear, it's correctly sizing that oval, okay? And the oval takes up roughly 2/3 of our circle. How do we get 2/3? So here's the easy way. If you can draw a circle in any size you want, right? So if you're drawing in a little, 6-inch notebook, right? But you still want to do something accurate, or whether it's a large piece of paper like this one, this is, I think, 14 by 17 or 12 by 16. I usually like drawing on very large sheets of paper. The way to successfully come up with the right dimensions is split the head into 2 halves. So it's easy to find, kind of like the circle. We split it in a half. Here's the top. Here is the bottom of my circle. And then I find the midpoint.
Yeah.
Okay. So that means you'll have 2 halves, 1 half, 2 halves. Next, if we split those 2 halves into thirds, okay, so I have 1/3, 2/3, so I have 3 pieces, and on the bottom I have 3 more pieces. So in essence, if we look at the entire distance, we have 6. That oval is supposed to be 2/3 of the main cranium. So let's look at it. It's 1/6, 2/6, 3/6, 4/6. 4/6 is 2/3. Okay, so you'll never have to use a measuring device to find 2/3. You just find the full length of the circle, you find the midpoint. Then you take those 2 halves, you cut them into thirds, and then you take 2/3 from the top, 2/3 from the bottom, right? Which is really 6 if you look at the entire distance, and that will represent the size of the oval. Now these are very generic, right? So depending on the person that you're drawing, right? So this would be, let's say this is an adult. If you're doing it for a child, the dimensions are, not vastly different, but they are different. Like the jaw would be smaller, right? And not as wide. The ear might be smaller. So the oval may change, or depending on the person. Sometimes if you look at the the actor who played Herman Munster in The Munsters. I don't know if, I guess, I'm assuming everybody remembers that, right? His head, his cranial mass might be much larger than, say, what's her name from Breakfast at Tiffany's? I forget sometimes. Audrey Hepburn. I saw Shirley's mouth. Okay, so Audrey Hepburn, right? So her head cranium might be much smaller, right? So it depends on who your subject is, and that's why it's so important to get some really good reference photos. And like if you're using a reference photo, you don't want to use like almost like a driver's license ID, or a photo from a yearbook from years ago, right? So good reference is always really important. Okay, so now we've discussed the cranium, the side plane and the face represented by the oval. We know the oval is 2/3 of the cranial mass. Okay, now how can we use those two measurements to figure out the rest of the stuff? Well, the top of this oval roughly represents the hairline. Okay, and the bottom of the oval represents the base of the nose. So if you're looking at your nose, it would be the septum, right? It's that piece of cartilage and skin right between your nostrils. It would be the base, where your nose, the base of the nose, touches the upper portion of the lip. That's roughly where the nose goes, the base of the nose. Now, in between these, right in the midpoint, right about here, is the brow line. So the brow line is not the middle of the brow. It's not the beneath the brow. It's pretty much right at the top of the brow. So if I was to draw kind of like a curve, there's another method of approaching portraitures called the Riley method. And Riley, he approaches it with the portrait with rhythm lines, and the brow line kind of rocking like this. This is considered one of those rhythm lines. Now, Loomis is much more straightforward. It's a lot simpler. The Riley method is a bit more involved. There's a lot of shapes and a lot of different relationships that are being correlated. And I would say that's, if you mastered the Loomis method, I would say look at the Riley method next and see how you can overlay those two. So Riley would be Reilly. So if you look up Riley method or Loomis method, we're looking up Loomis. We're studying Loomis right now, Andrew Loomis. Riley, I'm forgetting his first name, but just type in Loomis method or Riley method. You'll have, plenty of I guess, resource materials that'll pop up. Okay, so now we've established the hairline, the brow line, and the base of the nose. Okay, so how do we find the chin? Because when we first start, it's just a circle and an oval. Well, the chin, right? Well, this section, our face is roughly divided into thirds. Now, again, this is something that changes from person to person. Some person might have a higher forehead. Some people have a shorter nose. But generically speaking, you can split the face up into thirds. From the hairline, notice I'm saying from the hairline and not the top of the cranium. So from the hairline to the brow, from the brow to the base of the nose, and then you take this measurement and you just bring it down from the base of the nose, wherever that space is, that's where your chin roughly lies. Okay? Now going from the chin, all right, so now we have these lines here. This line would be here by itself. We're going to do a construction of this together. We would just join these two edges here in a soft curve, right? In a gently curving line, no straight lines, right? Because there are no straight lines in the face. And then from this corner of the chin, right, we would bring a line gently sloping up to the ear. And if you look at the oval here, I've bisected the oval. So going from the top of the oval down to the bottom of it, there's a straight line here. And at that straight line, that's where the jaw comes out. Okay, so the jawline drops here, and then we can draw a gentle sweeping curve meeting up at the chin here. So we want to establish the chin. We want to make this line in line with the base of the nose and the brow, meaning these lines will always travel together. So if your brow line is going at an angle like this, that means your nose will be at an angle, same angle, and your chin will follow. This is one of the easiest ways to track whether your facial features are put in correctly. If you put a line up to your facial features and they don't match up, then the proportions are off or your angles are off, okay? So that's a good way to audit yourself, right? So since my head is kind of in a neutral position, it's just looking to the left, that means my brow line is straight across, my nose line will be straight across, and my chin line will be straight across, okay? With the side plane, we have a vertical line here in this oval, and then there's another line going from the tip of the brow or from the edge of the brow to the ear, right? So this also bisects the oval at an angle. And we're going to look at that a little bit more closely on the next panel that I got, okay?
Sam, sorry,
and
can I just,
yeah,
sorry,
sure.
Sam.
What's up?
So from the base of the nose, this is Dima. Hi.
Hi.
From the base of the nose to the base of the chin is the same distance as from the hairline to the brow, from the brow to the base of the nose.
Correct.
Correct?
Yep.
Thank you.
So just think of these as thirds. So this is 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. Okay. Oh, that's pretty light. I didn't mean for that. Yeah, 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. All right. And where the jaw inserts into the skull, right behind it is the ear canal. So just tucked right in there, right? This isn't the most in-depth model, but if you would look to look at the skull, there's a hole that appears right behind the skull, and that's where the ear canal is. So the ear appears right behind that hole, and that hole should be right around here. It's covered by your, oh, what's that triangular piece of the ear called? I forget. Well, the ear canal is kind of tucked in behind there, but if you were to follow it and look inside, it would be basically right behind the base of, or the where the jaw inserts to the skull. All right, I think that's about it. Oh, the center line. The center line of the face, okay, does not follow the circle. So if I was to draw the circle and a line going straight through, that would not be considered the center line of the face. You would have to kind of like use your eye to judge where the center line is. It would be the midpoint of the chin. So the center point of the face, right, depending on where the face turns, can kind of move with the orientation of the face, right? So if you imagine a line going down here, it's in the center. But as I move it to the side, that center line tracks with the positioning of the face. So it can be very off to the side. It could be way off to the side, but it's still considered the center line of the face. Okay. Again, we'll see more of that in a little bit. Okay, so next slide. Boom. All right, so I had a ball drawing these because I've been putting it out for a while. I should have been doing this a lot more often than I have been. But this is me just practicing all the things that we've just been talking about. So this is a neutral orientation here. This is with the head tilted back. So it's kind of tilted back and then kind of going along this plane here. And then all these heads on this side is the head tilting down and kind of tracking that way. So here is why drawing circles and ovals is very useful, because these ovals are in a very neutral position, right? If you look at the line bisecting the oval here, they're very straight up and down, right? All of them are up and down. But the width of the ovals is changing due to it turning in space, right? My hand is flat, my hand is wide, and it's tracking that orientation there. Now, once you start changing the angles, that oval starts to begin, now it's not in a neutral position, it's kind of angled at the same time, but it's also turning in space, right? So that would be like these ovals kind of turning on an angle like this. This is why maybe something like this would be useful to have, because it's kind of difficult remembering or training to draw ovals at different angles. And the same thing here, you can see how the ovals are at a slightly different angle over here. All right. So that model that I showed you before, the 3D model, was extremely instrumental in helping me figure out all this stuff. It kind of, learning from life is really hard for especially beginner artists to kind of quiet down all that detail. You're struggling to find the underlying structure, and you can't help but, you know, pay attention to the eyes, the nose, you know, all you want to kind of jump into the other stuff. It would be like baking a cake, but all you want to do is serve the icing, you know. There's a lot of stuff that comes before that you have to do in order to actually present the cake, right? You give somebody a plate of icing, and you're in trouble. So this would be kind of like the beginning, right? This is, you know, all the main ingredients, you know, flour, sugar, eggs, all that good stuff. And then the icing comes on later. All right, so I want to, at least I want to attempt some of these together, right? So this is the neutral position, right? And a lot of portraits are usually in this neutral position. I would like to show you some of these other ones in case there are other people, you know, joining along who want to kind of be more of like storytellers. And if you're into drawing sequential art or anything like that, this would be instrumental. You want to be able to tell, you know, you're like a director, you're directing a movie. You want to be able to put heads in any kind of orientation, and then kind of tell your story with that. But for the most part, portraiture is very neutral, right? And I'm kind of jumping the gun here, but this is what I mean by icing. So this is one of I just did this portrait. This is my first, I guess, really good portrait of 2021. And this is after an amazing portrait artist from Russia. His name is Nikolai Fechin. I'm not sure if any of you guys have heard of him. It's a shame because there are a lot of stellar Russian, or actually anyone beyond the Eastern Bloc, right, that we didn't really get exposed to due to, you know, communism and, you know, all that turmoil. But there are phenomenal artists in Europe that we just do not know anything about. They're not taught, and we kind of like just coming across them now. This is another one. This is the first one I attempted by Nikolai Fechin. But so here's a good reason why reference is important. So I attempted to draw a portrait with no reference. This is all from my head, just trying to, you know, use what I know, my knowledge. And I kind of was underwhelmed, right, with the subject. So you could see with a good reference, right? So this is a drawing of a drawing, but you could, I would, if you want to do that, I'd say go right ahead. You kind of learn it. It kind of quiets down a lot of the detail, like color and all that stuff, right? But you could just as well learn from life, right? I would encourage both. Find your favorite artist, right? Try to emulate. Emulation is good. You're not copying anybody. You're just learning from the masters, right? So you can see without reference, with reference. So there's, if all you saw was drawings of this, you would think, wow, he lacks a lot of skill. It's just actually a lack of information. I don't know what I don't know, right? So studying from life or studying from other, you know, masters, I would highly recommend. Will you be able to draw like this at the end of this course? That depends a lot on how much time and effort you guys are putting in on your end, right? So I can give you the information, but you guys really have to take this information and put it to practice and really utilize that, right? So yeah, so this is a little further along. I think we'll do this next class with the facial features. So, oh, another good warm-up exercise. Actually, you know what? Let's just get into drawing. All right, so before I get too much talking, we'll talk, draw. All right, so for the warm-up exercise that I teach, right? It's kind of like something that I've distilled over time. I've been taught, you know, several warm-up techniques. I feel like this is one of them that works well for me. And I kind of made up a game of it. So, oh, that's a little hard to see. Let me get another pencil. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm holding, let's discuss first how I'm holding the pencil. So to do ellipses and circles, I tend to do an overhand grip, only because it allows me to keep my wrist neutral. To me, this feels, although I do hold my pencil in a traditional way, right? I feel like holding the pencil in a very like overhand is very neutral and a little bit more natural. Whereas we're used to this, although this isn't 100% natural because we have to twist our hand out of the way. And this is more natural for writing, right? Fine motor skills. But for general sweeping kind of movements, right? I'll switch to my other camera to show what's going on. So with my shoulder, I'm kind of moving, I'm drawing from my shoulder, right? My elbow's kind of going along for the ride, and my hand is gently, coming into contact with the paper. So I'm not hovering, I'm not doing this and drawing with my pencil there. My hand, I don't know if you guys can hear it, right? My fingertips are actually coming into contact. I'm holding the pencil pretty much with these two. These hands are supporting the pencil, and I'm sliding my hand. I am making contact, right? And I'm going to start and stop my oval, right? So I'll show you an example of what this exercise isn't. It's not this, right? I like to call these tomatoes. They look like cute little tomatoes. And it is not this, okay? It is, any other kind of weird shape you can think of, right? So this is not really getting our points to meet. What this exercise does, it teaches you some more hand-eye coordination, okay? We want to connect our mind, right, our eyes and our hand to do exactly what we want them to do. So just like a baseball player, kind of going up to the plate, taking some practice swings before the pitch comes, that's what this is. And to me, doing this 3 times before I swing, I've really drawn 4 circles. 3 of them I just don't see. The 4th one I do. So what you're doing is you're, tripling or quadrupling the amount of circles that you're actually doing. Now the idea is to get our ovals to touch. Or the endpoints, I should say. Now you can kind of see it right here, where it doesn't quite make it, but it's pretty close. So that's the game aspect. I'm trying every single time, I'm trying to get those 2 points to touch, so it looks like there's no beginning and no end. So here I can tell, here I can't tell, not so much. So that's one aspect of this exercise. The other aspect is speed, right? So I'm thinking nice, even speed, not too slow. So here's what, I guess, if you've ever attempted drawing on your own, but you've never been taught, this kind of grip or continuous movement, we tend to hatch, right? We draw many, many small lines and we attempt to connect them. And what we tend to get is like a kind of like a furry little ball, right? We get these like hatch marks. So this kind of teaches you continuous movement so that your lines are a lot smoother. They're more readable. Right? So this last one was really good. Yeah, so these lines, when you're drawing, you can be a lot more selective with your lines because you've put in the work, right? You're calibrating your tool. Your hand and your pencil are the tools. So this is kind of like a calibration mechanism as well. You're controlling the speed, you're controlling where your hand goes, right? By making those 2 points touch. Hold on, this autofocus is killing me. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, right. And during all of this, so I'm controlling my speed. I'm moving my arm in circular motion. I'm trying to aim at my starting point, right? My finishing points and my two end points are overlapping. I'm trying to get my ovals as close to each other as possible without touching. So that's another layer of control. Right? So in my hypothesis is that anybody can kind of draw oval on top of oval on top of oval to make kind of like this chain effect, right? But how does that help you in controlling what you want to do? It might warm up your arm, the muscles, right? But it won't really help you, I guess, create that mind-eye, that hand-eye coordination that I'm talking about, right? So I try to get my ovals as close as I possibly can, right, without touching. Pressure is also another thing that's very important. So if I'm pressing really hard, it's very obvious. Sometimes this is a compensation for inexperience, right? So you don't feel confident to press very lightly and draw one. So you press really hard. That's your body way of creating more resistance. And anything with more resistance is just a little bit easier control, right? So if I press hard, I can really hone in on what I'm drawing in, right? But what that leaves you with is a permanent line. If I go to erase that, it's not going anywhere. That's really inconvenient when you're doing a drawing that you're going to make mistakes, right? Mistakes that will have to be corrected. If they're permanent marks, your page is going to become just a layer of lines that you're not going to be able to recognize towards the end. So it's just a good habit. So what's the other layer of control here? Pressure. Drawing as lightly as possible while also completing the task. Nice, smooth lines. I'm doing my practice swings. I'm getting my two endpoints to meet. I'm also varying the ovals, right? Because just from our few examples that we studied, if I point out some of these ovals, right, some are skinny, some are fat, some are, short height-wise, some of them are tall height-wise. So I was kind of very uniform here. But you could also change the orientation of your ovals, right, to be up and down. Okay. You could also draw them at an angle. Now, I'm always curious to find out what people find more comfortable, because I feel like it comes down to preference as far as this. Which direction are you drawing your circles and ovals? I tend to go counterclockwise. I draw into my body first, go away, and then come back in. I feel like that's just more comfortable for me, but some people draw clockwise. So my preference is counterclockwise. Some people feel more comfortable drawing counterclockwise. Once this was brought to my attention, I just started doing both. So I'll draw counterclockwise to begin, but then I'll also practice counterclockwise. To me, drawing outward first and then coming back in underneath, I don't know, for some reason that I find that a little uncomfortable. I'm always curious to see what you guys gravitate to first. But either way, I tend to feel like that's preference. So you can change direction. Right, I would really try to stretch myself here. Sometimes I draw really big ovals. Right, and all right, so that's it for ovals. The last, I know that's a lot coming at you. For warm-up exercises, it's like, holy smokes, this is a lot. But so we're controlling speed, pressure. We're aiming to finish where we started. We're trying to get our ovals as close to each other as possible. So we're controlling spatially what we're doing here, right? The other, and I think this is the last one. I like to put an oval inside my ovals, but I try to make it as large as I possibly can without touching the oval on the outside. right? So again, my hypothesis is it's just another layer of control, right? It's me telling my hand what to do, because I don't know how many countless number of times I've had an idea in my head, and then once I apply it to paper, it takes a turn and goes somewhere totally different, and I can't really understand why, right? So it's just connecting your mind to your hand and doing exactly what you want to do. And this, I feel like this is the simplest way of kind of doing that, right? So this wouldn't be the be all end all of warm-up exercises, but I feel like this is something that's useful because we are going to be using, in portraiture especially, we're going to be using curves, ovals, circles almost entirely through the process, right? So it's really good to become acquainted with this. And even in the spare spaces here, I'll fill those up. Because in reality, this is a throwaway page. If you want to keep them, that's completely up to you. But for the most part, this is just a training exercise. It's just for warm up, right? All right, and so like I said, for these large ovals, I can always put other ovals inside here. So don't be afraid of going too large, because you can always add smaller ovals on the inside. Now, in case you guys are wondering, like, man, I don't feel like wasting all this paper. You know, if I'm doing this every day, if I do this for a month, that's 30 sheets of paper that I'm throwing away. Well, I would not buy top of the line paper. I have a pack of paper. It's also pretty large. So give me 1 second. So I found this stack of paper. So it's called Saks Manila drawing paper. It's 12 by 18, great size to draw, 500 sheets. This will run you about $5. So this paper, if you can see that, right? Paper like this is extremely cheap and affordable, right? It's not considered archival, right? That's kind of like one of the buzzwords when buying, you know, really good paper at the art store. It's not acid free. This is just paper. This is stuff that you can have on hand if you want to sketch out any ideas. You're doing warm-up exercises, you're doing training exercises. This is the kind of stuff you want to have lying around. Big old stack. It should last you probably for a whole year or more. And I found that stuff in an elementary school. So I actually work in an elementary school, and they had the stuff by the boatloads. So it's extremely cheap. You can find that on Amazon. Yeah, so I highly recommend having 2 sets of paper. Throwaway paper for warm-up exercises and sketching and practicing, and then good paper for when you're ready to take the plunge and, you know, do something really concrete. All right. And if you don't have, you know, drawing paper on hand, if you have computer paper, that comes, you know, really in a fat stack, you can practice on that as well. So it doesn't have to be drawing paper. Whatever you have on hand is good for now. But in the future, if you really want to take this seriously and give it a real good go, you're going to need lots of paper. All right, so along with the ovals, I would practice drawing the circle. Okay, so circles, you can see ovals can be, you know, there's an infinite different sizes and shapes that you can do. But for circles, a circle is a circle. I feel like I'm talking like Dr. Seuss. A circle is a circle, no matter what size it is, right? It's a very particular shape. So if I draw, it's not going through. So if I draw a circle, there we go. Right. A circle is a circle, no matter what size. I should do a children's book about a circle. Right. So you could actually draw a circle and then hover your pencil around the edge to really try to train your hand to move in that circular motion. Right. if you don't have a piece of cardstock, so I showed you the cheap way of doing it, right? But the really, really easy way is just find something round in your house, right? Now, you can't really control the size of this, which is why this is so useful, right? But you guys, I kind of caught you off guard. I didn't tell you to have like a piece of cardstock on hand. But if you have a cup, a mug, you know, a little dish, you can trace a circle. Then you can kind of hover around it. You could even try to follow the circle with your pencil circles to see how close you get to it. Right? So this is a calibration exercise. Right? And then you would attempt to draw your circles. Your circle, right, is the main cranial mass. Oh, I got my light pencil. So I'm switch to my darker pencil. Right, so that's close, but there seems to be a little bit of a bulge here. For warm-up exercise, normally it wouldn't take more than 5 or 10 minutes. I'm talking at length. I know. What time is it? 6:23. Holy smokes. Right. I'm really talking at length. I'm really trying to drive home, you know, the skills that are going to help you with portraiture later on. So it's important to get this stuff down now. For the circle, same thing. Trying to get my circle as close to each other as possible. A decent amount of speed. You don't want to practice too fast and then slow down. And the same thing for the opposite. You don't want to do slow, 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 and then you do a quick circle. Continuous speed, draw at the same speed. Continuous speed, draw at the same speed. Right, so you could take 2, 3 practice swings, and then you go. So this is another reason why I like to practice on large sheets of paper, because portraiture is much easier on large sheets of paper. Okay, not to say that you can't do it on 8x10 or you can't get a likeness, but I feel like either like 1-to-1 size, life size portraiture is really very flattering to the subject, and it's just pleasing to the eye, seeing something, you know, at a nice size on the wall. If you were to take an 8x10 drawing of someone and you take it to a gallery and you put it on the wall, it's going to look like a postage stamp. It's just going to get swallowed up, right, by all that space. So the same thing might be the same in your house, right? So if you have, you know, your special pictures, they're always large. You have your family pictures, you have your graduate pictures, you always got them, you know, 8x10, 11x14. You always have them a large size. And then your other photos, you have your little, you know, 4x6s, they're kind of sprinkled around. Which one is it easier to see from a distance, right? So in a practical sense, drawing larger, especially drawing, is just more flattering, but it's also easier to draw detail, and it takes more work to shade. But as far as fine detail, like you know, wrinkles around the eyes, eyelids, that kind of thing, drawing at like a really small size it's very difficult. It takes a lot of control. There's a lot of erasing. It can be frustrating at times. So getting comfortable with drawing larger is my suggestion also. So if you were to get a sketchbook, say you want to buy a sketchbook, I don't think I have any sketchbook smaller than 9x12. So I usually always have to hold them in my hand when I'm going somewhere. But you know, you can get a schedule. You can get a sketchbook. Let's see, what size is that? 18x24. You can get them pretty big. Drawing pads. All right, so that's it for circles. Okay. Another exercise that you might want to get good at, right, is our perspective. So this is one. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of 1-point or 2-point perspective. So think of railroad tracks. If you're standing on railroad tracks and you're looking way off in the distance and those tracks are going straight, or you're on a sidewalk, you're on a New York City sidewalk, and you're looking way down the city blocks, it appears that those lines meet at some place. Now, if you travel 2 miles down that road, you know for a fact, or down those tracks, you know for a fact that those tracks do not meet. They're the exact same distance as 2 miles behind you. But the way we perceive distance and the way light and works with our eyes and the way our, you know, retinas interpret, the way our brain interprets distance, it appears things get smaller the further things are away. And as far as evolution goes, that's extremely important that that happens, right? We can gauge distance. To kind of recreate that illusion on a piece of paper, we're taking something 2D, just a flat plane, and we're trying to represent 3D. There's a couple of tricks that we can use, and one of them being a vanishing point. The easiest being a single vanishing point, right? So with a single vanishing point, we can do something simple like this, like a box. So I will kind of demonstrate here. If I draw a rectangle, right? And then from the corner to the vanishing point, I draw a line. So I drew 3 lines, right? I have 4 corners of the box, and from the corners that are visible, I drew 3 lines. Now these lines, this line is going straight up and down, vertical. I'm going to draw another vertical line here, right? So now I have a side plane, right? But I don't have a bottom plane. So wherever this line, wherever this vertical line touched the perspective line, I'm going to draw a horizontal line parallel to this. And now I've closed the back of that box. And I'll create.
Sam?
Yes.
Would you mind just commenting on the concept you mentioned, the 2-point perspective, I think you said?
Yeah. All right. So 2-point perspective is using 2 vanishing points.
Oh, okay.
Right. So that there you're utilizing these simultaneously. Right now, I just want you to focus on this one point.
Right.
So this is kind of a forced way of looking at things. This isn't the true way to look at it. Usually it's 2 vanishing points, but for simplicity's sake and I guess simplifying the concept, we're going to use only 1 point. Right.
Okay.
So all these lines are converging at this point. Now that doesn't really happen because we can't. How can we see this, the front of this box and the front of this plane? These lines cannot be perpendicular to each other if they're turning in space. I'll prove that in the next one, but I just want to show you how using 1-point perspective is a really good way of introducing perspective.
Okay, so this is the example of 1-point perspective.
Right. Yeah. So just focus on this shape here. I did this one,
right.
and,
okay. Thank
and this
you.
pyramid here.
And,
right. So,
and in each case, the vanishing point is the same, that center dot that you drew, even for the pyramid at the bottom.
Yeah.
It's the same vanishing point.
Yeah. So this pyramid, you can tell. You can tell by the edge of the lines. If it recedes to that point,
yeah,
that's how you know it belongs to that vanishing point.
Great.
Right. So this cylinder recedes here. This box, everything comes here.
Okay. Thank you.
Same
that was really helpful.
Yeah, no problem. For 2-point perspective, right, it would use 2. So just to simplify, I'll flip it over. So we start with the horizon. Now for the horizon, when we're thinking of, outside, we think of like the curvature of the earth, right? If you were to stand on, I see some comments in the chat. This should, okay. All right, so if you're standing on a beach and you're looking at the edge of the ocean, the horizon is the curvature of the earth where the curve dips away. It's about 3 miles, they say. It's approximately 3 miles before things start to disappear behind the curvature of the earth. For the horizon in drawing, you want to think of eye level. This represents the eyes of the viewer. Okay. So if I am drawing 2 lines here, right? I'm going to draw a line here. This is a vertical line here. I've created 2 points now. So at the ends of this line here, I have 2 points. I'm going to connect 2 lines over here. And I'm going to connect 2 lines roughly to this point. okay? Now this is a vertical line. I'm going to draw another vertical line here. I'm going to draw another vertical line here. So right now I've created two planes. So this is the front plane, this is the side plane, or they can both be considered side planes. Now what I've done is created two more points. One here, well, it's actually the bottom points of over here. They're not connected to anything. So I'm going to take this point, I'm going to connect it to this vanishing point. I don't have to do it over here because this point already lies on that line. So there's no point in drawing another line there. It's already there. This one, however, needs to be connected over there. So if I take this, right? So now I've created my three planes, the two side planes and the bottom plane here. So I'll just darken up these lines to emphasize that. Now, why is this important? Well, things like the nose, right? The bridge of the nose, the ball of the nose, or even cheekbones. Like there's three-dimensionality to the face. And the more you recognize how to create these forms three-dimensionally, the more you'll be able to kind of track them when drawing the face. Now, are you going to be drawing boxes and stuff for each feature? No, you don't necessarily have to do that, but understanding this concept does help with I guess keeping all your features in proportion, right? So if I was to use the circle again, right? This is the one well, it's not a very good circle, but I have a circle. This is how I like to teach younger kids how to turn the face in space. I make like a little robot. So if I keep this at a neutral position, right? The head is not looking up, it's not looking down, it's neutral. And then I imagine the North and South pole, and then I bend that line, right? I've created a smaller and a larger section. In the smaller section, I have a thin eye, and in the larger section, I would have a larger eye. So just that illusion there makes it appear that the face is turned in space and looking to the left, right? So the size has changed. I've changed the orientation. Now, the same thing could be said for the face. So saying this box, or let's say if I create another box here. So this time I'm going to have it directly on the horizon, right? So my box will appear directly on the horizon. I'm connecting my two vanishing points. Right? Now I have two planes, right? I'm going to erase the horizon to make the box look solid. Now imagine this is a face. Say there's two eyes here, right? I'll leave out the nose for now. But depending on how you're lighting something, right, or the way you're perceiving it, one eye can appear slightly larger than the other eye, okay, because it's turning in space. A portrait that looks directly out at you wouldn't necessarily fit this, right? But a lot of portraits are, to the side. You have like a 3/4 pose. This is profile. This would be a direct portrait, right, looking directly at you. And then to the side at a 45-degree angle, right, or we call that like a 3/4 pose, okay? This is where you would get two planes of the face. This knowledge, right, would help you understanding how to correctly light your portrait, because not only are we going to discuss like structure, how to build the portrait, you have to eventually, once you have your drawing, you're eventually going to want to shade it, right? So understanding different planes, especially on the nose is really, it's really something else. All the things going on with the nose. The same thing with the ear, though. Studying light and direction and three-dimensionality. This is another good exercise you might want to practice. So, so if I was to draw, actually, if I draw a line here, right, these two lines kind of go off into the distance. right? So this is a little bit closer to how we perceive distance, right? There's usually 2 points of perspective. There is 3 points, which is, I guess, a little bit out of the scope of this this kind of lesson, right? But think of it as like you're standing on the corner and you're looking up at the Empire State Building, right? So not only do you have like the corners, right? You have the corner, this side of the building, you have this side of the building, but the actual height of the building comes into play. So imagine there's a dot way up in the sky, and those lines kind of look like they're going to meet up at the sky, right? So that would be your 3rd point of perspective. But like I said, that's usually for distance or like a worm's eye view. So imagine you have a camera at the base of your feet, right? Looking up at somebody's face. That would be considered worm's eye view, the opposite being bird's eye view, looking top down. Worm's eye view, you'd be looking up. So the 3rd dot would kind of control the perspective of the body, where it looked like things would become much smaller at the top. But that's 3-point perspective. So learning how to turn things in space, this is a very rudimental way of coming up with different planes. Okay, this plane is facing out that way, right? And this plane is facing this way, right? So it's coming up with that dimensionality, that direction, right? This is to familiarize that, familiarize yourself with that. And if you eventually want to get into drawing the figure, adding cylinders and how to shade those and pyramids, you were going to use all these kind of simple shapes to build out your figure, right? In a kind of like a outline, right? Think of like you're starting out with wires, and then you're eventually adding other stuff on top. So we're going to get into, where the features go, how they line up. And this is another exercise in perspective. But okay, so let's approach. Let's try some of these here. So for this face, so using the Loomis method, I know this is like a roundabout way of, how much time do we have? 6:40. Okay. So we're going to attempt to use the Loomis face. And I have all of these looking left. I guess I had the idea that this portrait was looking left, so I wanted to kind of study the left-hand side. But many of the portraits, especially like Rembrandt, he had many portraits facing the right way. So let's try facing right as well. So first, we're going to start with the circle. Actually, you know what? To get them out of the way, let's draw several circles. We're going to draw maybe 6 circles. Okay, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, not perfect. If you have an eraser, I use 2 different types of erasers, actually 3. So I have a white vinyl eraser, I have my pink eraser, and my kneaded eraser. The kneaded eraser is like a piece of dough. You can fold it, pull it, right? And your pencil marks will kind of get swallowed by your eraser. So it's like a self-cleaning eraser. These will last you a really long time. So I have kneaded erasers that are years old. Pink eraser is just nice to have a hard edge sometimes. Just be careful which kind of pink eraser you use. Sometimes you use pink and it stains the paper. For some reason, this one doesn't, so I like this one. And then you have your white vinyl eraser, which doesn't leave any marks. But sometimes it's not as stiff as my pink eraser, so it's a little hard erasing with this. So, I mean, each one has its own merits, but the kneaded eraser is kind of like an artist staple. I don't know any artist that doesn't have a kneaded eraser. They're very cheap. All right, so we have our 6 circles. So now our ovals, right? Looking at the skull, right? So you have to think of it as like a piece of dough, and the edges of the circles have been sliced off. So we're going to slice off one side and the other. Now I just kind of eyeballed it, but remember the oval is 2/3 of this circle here. So if I was to take the top edge, bottom edge, then the center, and then cut that into thirds, I would roughly have the size of oval that I have to remove, right? So you don't want to remove too much like this, and you don't want to remove too little like this. Okay, so I'm getting better at just eyeballing the distance and fixing it on the fly. But if you need to measure it out, top mark, bottom mark, center mark, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then you take these middle 4 marks here. Okay, the top mark, hairline, the center mark, the brow line, the bottom mark is where the nose goes, right? We said the base of the nose rests right here. Now, the distance between here and here, right, it should be the same. We're going to take that distance and we're going to add it again for our third mark. Now, I'm using my eyeball, just eyeballing it, but you could, if you're drawing a much larger portrait, it might be a little bit harder to do. You could use comparative measurement. Comparative measurement is literally just taking your pencil. Well, this is one version. You could use just a plain old stick if you want to, the end of a paintbrush. You can match the tip of the pencil point to that line, and then with your fingers, you would grip where the bottom of that line meets, okay? So now my measurement is the tip of the pencil to the top of my thumb. So if I move it down, right, you can see where I made that mark. It's just about where I need it to be. So that's how I know I have my thirds. Okay, so I have my third mark there. Now, if you're, I would kind of discourage you guys from using too many measuring tools, because then I don't want you guys to become dependent. Like I could measure this in millimeters and measure it out, but everybody's face is different. Everybody is not going to conform to thirds. This is a great place to start, but things might need to be stretched, shrunk, you know, pulled sideways. And I actually have a good picture to show for that too. So now the edges of this circle are effectively gone, right? And we're left with the edge of the face. So the jaw starts to protrude downward, and then we have a gently curving line that meets the chin. Same thing for the other side. Down, meets the chin. Okay. Now, so that was our straightforward approach, right? Our face, if we draw the center line, I guess that'll be the last thing that we draw. This is an even Steven kind of drawing. The eyes are right about here. You don't have to draw the eyes. I'm just showing you where they rest. Remember, because this line represents the brow. So the brow, if I was to draw a rhythm line, they appear right there. Okay. From the edges of the chin, we have a line going to the center of that oval on the side. And that gives us a rough view of the planes of the face. So the front plane is different from the side plane. So the cheeks, they're kind of at this oblique angle, right? They look like, it's like you're taking a ball and you're cutting off more of the sphere that we started with, right? And you get more of this shape here. Now that's going to change depending on the fleshiness of the person. If somebody has big chubby cheeks, right? You might not get these austere angles. You might not see this, but the underlying structure, this is what's there. Okay, so as far as shading certain faces, this is pretty useful. All right, so let's try another circle. I made my circles roughly the same size, so I can just kind of guesstimate the top and bottom of my oval, right? So if you did your circles fairly close to each other, you can kind of borrow the measurements from the previous circle and add them to this one. Right, so I'm going to make an oval here. The oval will come in contact with the back of the head. So the back of the sphere here, the oval comes in contact with it. Okay. All right. It's a little small. Okay. So now I have my hairline. Now we can start to see the side of the face. I'm going to draw a horizontal line here, right? And that matches with the brow line. The bottom portion of the oval, that's the base of the nose. For the oval, I'm going to also put a vertical line here, bisecting it. And we said wherever this line appears at the base of that line, that's where the jaw starts to come out of. All right. Oh, but before we do that, let's get the chin. So we have 1/3, 2/3. Now we're going to drop down and give us our last third. So I'm guesstimating again. Right. I'm just kind of eyeballing it, but it looks pretty accurate. I'm going to draw a line from this edge of the circle down to the chin. From over here, draw the jaw. And okay, so now to draw the center line, so the center line for this one is easy. It's just straight down. Now over here, since the head is turning in space to the right, we kind of have to follow along with the center line. So I'm going to guesstimate again along the chin. I'm going to go straight up to about the hairline. And then the hairline, I'm going to start to, I guess, take into consideration the slope of the forehead, right? So this starts to curve back. Right, and now we have a figure looking to the right. Now again, the eyes are going to be roughly about here. As you can see, remember from my little robot guy that I was telling you about, as your eyes are turning, there's going to be less visible on this side, right? Wherever the head is turning, things on that side of the face become smaller, and they actually will become obscured by, the nose, things of that nature. All right, but that comes later on in the features. You don't have to draw those two things. Right now, I just want you guys to get comfortable with drawing the planes of the face. All right, so let's keep turning in space. All right, so now we're moving more to the right. How do we show that? By the oval. So we start with the sphere, the circle. We add the oval. This time I'm going to draw a larger oval. I'm borrowing my dimensions or from my other circle. All right, we're still in a neutral pose, so I'm going to, neutral meaning this line follows, this is a good line to gauge the top of the ear and the brow. So the ear kind of lives just behind the jaw. Remember we said the jaw comes from here. This is where the ear lives. If from the ear to the brow line, if it's a straight line, it means it's a neutral pose. If it starts to face upward, right? If this line from the top of the ear to the brow starts to go up, that means the face is looking up. If it goes down, the face is looking down. Neutral is just looking left and right. Okay, so I'm going to, after I do my oval, I'm going to do my hairline, the eye line, or the brow line, and the base of the nose. I'm going to find my lower third. I'm going to draw the front edge of the face and meet up with the jaw. Now the face, it's turned more in space now. So that means my center line will be pushed over to the side even more. So my center line is pushed over more. So that means that the locations for the features is changing again, right? So actually, let me push it just a little bit further. All right, so that's to emphasize that the face is turning in space. All right, so let's push it a little further. Actually, let's go totally profile, because I could push it incrementally, right, in space. Normally we wouldn't draw portraits from the back of the head. I was just practicing that for myself. So let's do our next one. Let's see, we have time. Yeah, we got another 7 minutes. So let's do our next one in profile view. So that's another portrait, another popular portrait effect, right? So you can see for that one that the head, or the circle, it no longer appears as an oval. The side plane of the face is not considered an oval anymore. We're looking, perpendicular to it, right? So if I was to take this dish and look at it, we're looking at it as a perfect circle. It's not an oval anymore, right? So now it looks like this. So in our circle, right, I'm gonna find my 2/3 marks for the top and bottom, roughly. My circle is actually gonna look like it's floating. Right in the middle. Actually, let me draw a little bit larger. Right, so as you can see, I still make mistakes, right? I'm not immune to erasers. That's okay. Let's fix this. Okay, neutral pose. So our line will appear like this. This is our ear to brow line, right? We have our hairline in the front. We have where the base of the nose will be here. We have our first third, second third, and bottom third. The ear will sit here. The jaw will appear right behind that line. All right. Okay. So we have some very popular poses here, right? And you can actually take this exercise and you can push it as far as you want, because you have the formula, right? You have you know how to make an oval that's 2/3 the size of the circle. You know how to establish the hairline, the brow line, and the base of the nose. And then from that measurement, you can make the jawline. And then depending on how wide you make that oval and position it on the head, tells you how far you've pushed the turning of the head in space. Then you know that if you meet one side, if you close one side of the face here, meet it at the chin, and the jaw protrudes from, or originates from this vertical line here along the side of the face, you meet it here to the chin, right? You can establish the face in any number of incremental angles that you want. Okay, but learning the features, where they go and how they're formed, that's another battle for another day. Right, so I hope you guys learned something. Now the idea is to take this and really practice this. I would do, I would fill up a whole page with this. I would do it straight on like this, looking to the right. I would try looking to the left. Right, if you're feeling ambitious and you want to try these other angles, right, this kind of looks more like a heroic kind of pose, right? But this is turning things in perspective, which is why I introduce you to something like this, because learning how to do this, you know, this box could actually represent the chest. So if you put, where to go? If you put this face with this chest, right? If you can imagine that on top of this, you have the correct angle that you would be looking up at this person. Imagine like a Superman floating in the air or something like that, where you would see this front plane of the chest. This would be the side plane where the arm would appear. This would represent underneath the rib cage, you know? So actually I can share with you a picture that I had set up. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Okay, so, oops. Okay, so does everybody see this figure, the guy in blue pencil? Yes, if you got, oh,
Yep.
I see thumbs up, good. All right, so now taking rudimentary shapes, being able to manipulate them in three-dimensional space, right? The illusion of three-dimensionality. It all depends on, you know, the perspective of the shape. Now, it's hard to know how to manipulate these things if you've never attempted it before. So that's why things like the 1-point perspective trick I was showing you, right, to create objects in space, it's kind of a direct way of, you know, studying these shapes. You know, it's very simple, right? Learning anatomy is or, you know, it's just taking these shapes and creating them proportionally to a person. You don't have to know all the muscles of the body in order to draw a person in perspective. If you know how to draw shapes three-dimensionally and you can correctly measure them, then you can, you know, you can roughly draw the human figure, right? I know we're talking more about portraiture. I just feel like portraiture eventually leads to, you know, figure drawing at some point. Let's see. So I think, oh, so here's something I want to share as far as face shape, right? So here's some famous people and their different face types. Now, we did something that's very kind of generic, right? But if you look at all of their faces, they all kind of fit the same build. So if you look at from the ear to the brow for any of them, right? It's roughly the same distance, right? I'm saying they all line up. If you look at somebody straight across, the ear and the eyebrow line up. So by knowing that center third, you know where the ears rest, right? The center third is like the hot spot. You got eyes, nose, and ears. That's like 2/3 of the portrait. That's like 75% of a portrait. If you drew just the eyes, nose, and ears of a person, you would probably recognize them, right? So that's kind of like the meat and potatoes. I know I'm throwing a lot of analogies here, but right. So if you get that down, that relationship of ear, eyebrow, nose, you're in good shape. But you can see the hairline to the brow line is roughly the same. For a person like Ryan Reynolds, he has a very oval, you know, oval shaped face. So his forehead appears just a little bit taller than the generic one that we did. This guy here, I'm not exactly sure who he is, but his face is more square, right? You can see the side-by-side comparison. I really don't have to point out, like his chin is very long, whereas his is very square. So you can take this idea of the Loomis method and stretch the proportions to fit the need that you have. But for the most part, all faces fit those proportions, those measurements, okay? I'm not sure if I had anything else saved there. So again, this, if you want to go to this website, sketchfab.com, it's up here in the right-hand corner, and you wanted to study the face, because this is exactly what I did. I took this and I just moved it around. So I did it systematically. I did head on, and then I moved it to the side incrementally to draw everything that I needed. And this is the backwards view. If you want to restart, you can face it upwards and then incrementally move it over, and you would study that upward angle. You would reset, face it down, incrementally move it over to the side and practice that, right? And this is not the only version. So, and more, I wouldn't say more advanced, but this has just a few more details to it. This takes into consideration the side plane, right? So we have, remember I spoke about this line going from the chin to the cheek. So this one incorporates that. So this one further outlines the side of the jaw and the face. All right, so I should have introduced this earlier, but these lines that are drawn around the ball, we call those cross contour lines. So the lines describing the outside of the shape are just contour lines. But once you start to describe the inside portions of the shape, those are called cross contour lines, right? And those help to describe the three-dimensional surface that you're using, right? So you could take this face and also practice this, and you can actually start to visualize better how the planes of the face move in space, right? So we have hairline, brow line, nose, base of the nose, and then chin. Your lips, if you were to take this space from the base of the nose to the chin, about 1/3 of the way down, that's where your mouth is. That's where your mouth splits. But everybody's a little different, so that could actually change. Depends on your reference. Work from reference. I'm going to save you a lot of heartache. Trust me. Work from reference. And then if you're interested, you could always look in, for further models. So here it says $5. I did not pay $5. I'm looking at this for free. I think if you wanted to add it to any kind of 3D programming that you're using, you would pay that fee and then you have it and then you can manipulate it. Whereas this is just for viewing purposes. So I can look at this for free. All right. So everything I found on this website is free. But here's just another layer of difficulty as far as learning the planes of the face. They're adding the three-dimensional nose. Right now, it's not just a simple line. So I would say practice, work on what you feel comfortable with. There's more Loomis method versions here, right? Each one having its own little flavor. And I would be curious, get in there, dive in there. And that's pretty much all I have for today. Tomorrow, not tomorrow, next week we'll pick up with maybe placing the features so it looks more, where'd it go? Yeah, so we'll have something more like this, and I'll start to introduce in more detail the rhythm lines and how our facial features play with each other.
Sam, are we doing the draw lines next time or no?
These draw lines here?
Yeah.
Well, you can do it. Like I said, you would take the width of the chin, right? You have the left corner, and you would, draw a gently curving line to the
center of the center.
Yeah,
okay.
The center of the side of the plane, right? And you can do it on the other side too, but it kind of goes off into the distance.
Mm-hmm. And in that case, like that second three-quarter pose,
yeah.
Would that be cut off the way you cut off the side circle from the first sphere?
You're talking about this example here?
No, the previous one. So on
This
the
one?
right-hand side, no, the second one.
This
Yeah.
one. Okay.
Yeah. So the right-hand side, that draw line, would
Yeah.
that cut off the sphere, or depends on how much of a padding
Well,
you have
no,
over the
'cause
scope?
I see what you're saying. So this one, this would be like kind of like an
S curve,
so,
got it.
yeah. Let me zoom in.
So we have a cheekbone, and then we have the flat.
Right. So
area
perspective
under.
would kind of warp this a little bit, where it would curve out to the right, but then it would kind of wrap around the cheekbone, like you said.
Yeah.
It goes back to that wire model, that 3D model that I showed you. It better illustrates how that wire kind of wraps around there. Right. And to find those models, I typed in the word Loomis, Loomis, in the search bar for sketchfab.com. Right. So, I
Thank you.
mean, we're living in amazing times. You have a ton of free references. Oh, the other one that I could recommend is, let's see. Z Library. So you can literally type in any, I just found this the other day. I didn't even realize something like this was available online, but you can type in any author or creator in here. So Figure Drawing for All It's Worth. That's the book that I've been using. Creative Illustration. So I actually own these books. Now, depending on how you feel about supporting other artists, right? So if you can see, I have, I don't know if you guys can see I own these books, right? So I don't feel bad about downloading the PDF, but it's virtually free. You can have up to 5 free downloads. So you can download this entire book. So if I click this link, it's 23 megabytes. So I have everything that Loomis is taught from in this book, basically for free. But if you look below it, here are like 2 or 3 dozen more art books, most of them which I own. I own Color and Light. I own Creative Illustration. Dynamic Hands, I think I do have that one. Bridgman, that's another, yeah, Bridgman's Drawing from Life. I have this book. So I own a lot of these books. So I like to look at them. You know, I don't want to stare at a screen all day, but if you want more reference, kind of the tips of your fingers, you can go to Z Library and type in whatever you need. And it's not just art books, it's every book you can think of, I'm almost sure. But yeah, so like here's the book that I like to use. Right. So.
Oh, Sam, can I
Yes.
have a quick request? Can you
Sure.
just draw the eyes for the last example? Because I tried to do it on my own and it looks odd. So I just want to make sure I'm putting it in the right.
So you're talking about for this
area.
example here?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So now the eye from the angle, it's a little bit it's definitely, it wouldn't be round like this. I mean, if you were to have, if you had X-ray vision, the eye would kind of live in here. But the way your eyelids appear, right? The fleshiness that's there, it looks more like kind of like a, what is that? A less than sign, right? You have greater than or less than. So you have your upper eyelid, your lower eyelid at this kind of angle here. You would have just that side of the circle. You know, you would have to build out the bridge of the nose. There's kind of like a ladder here. So that's how that fits in there. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So
I was wondering how the second eye would look, and you just put a little.
Yeah, it's just like it's a little, you know, less than sign. Like if you're looking at math, right? And then you put in a little eye like that, more or less.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Depending on, you know, the eyelid, right? So, you know, you could have smaller eyes. It really depends on how low a person's eyelids are or fleshy the upper portion is, right? So this changes dramatically between people. It depends on who you are. Like me, I have a pretty fleshy upper eyelid. So if I right, you can't even see my eyelids, right, until I do this. Where some people have very sunken in eyes and you can see the whole upper eyelid, like, you know, you can see that whole thing. So like I said, reference is the way to go. But you know, definitely practice this. It'll save you a lot of trouble as far as positioning your person, right? Judging by how you look at a person, you'll be able to pick one of these angles, and they should fit this. They should fit one of those angles. Also, you are not a machine. You are a person. So you, like, shooting for photorealism out of the gate is just going to break your heart. So think simple, you know, get the ideas down, get your orientation down correct, and then detail and learning how to shade, how the structure of the facial features. You could spend a lifetime on just trying to learn how to do the eyes from all different, you know, nationalities and ethnicities and But again, reference will help you, 99% of the way. And that's all I got for today. Does anybody have any questions that they want to throw out? I know it was a lot of
What does your
info.
t-shirt say?
My t-shirt,
Weapons
my
of-
sister made this, and it says weapons of mass creation.
Cool.
So my younger sister, she made that for me on the Cricut. That's another thing I've been meaning to get into. So how'd you guys what'd you guys think of this this approach?
I learned a
Doable?
lot.
Excellent. Yeah, so I know trying to approach the face,
Very good.
it's like my face is a little fleshy, so it's very nondescript, right? And this lighting is also flat lighting. You don't get to see the planes of the face a lot. So doing something simple like this can help you discern what you're really seeing, Yeah, lighting is another thing. If you're going to get reference, do not go to like tabloid magazines or fashion magazines, because they're using a ton of light on these things. They're washing out the planes. So look for more dramatic lighting. I would look for people who are on the thinner side to begin with, right? Because you want to see those underlying features, structural features, the skull. Yeah, that's it. Be curious and practice. So for next week, I would suggest, you've put in, a couple of hours worth of practice with this. And we should
Will
be in good
do.
shape. Cool.
Thank you.
That was great, Sam. Thank you.
Great. I'm
Thank
glad you
you,
enjoyed it.
Sam.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. I'll see you
Thank
next
you for your
time.
time, Sam.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Great class.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Thank you
very much. Bye.
Teresa, for hosting the class.
Oh, yeah. Big shout out to Sharisa. Making
Dinner
it happen.
time.
Thanks, Sharissa.
Have a good
Have a nice
weekend.
weekend, everybody.
You too.
Bye, guys.